Hey there, welcome to Vince. Great to have you with us on a Monday, a monumental weekend. Holy crap, Friday, the United States Supreme Court says, yeah, President Trump can't be stopped by all of these crazy district judges. A lot of big wins to close out the Supreme Court term. Also, the big, beautiful bill advances in the United States Senate, no thanks to people like Tom Tillis and Rand Paul, who voted against it. I've got the details on that and how Tom Tillis just earned himself a rapid retirement with one post from the President of the United States. Also joining us today, Alex Marlow. You know him from Breitbart. He's got a great new book out. Big conversation ahead on the left and just how out of control it is. Always great to have you with us. The best damn audience in media. We got a lot to do. We're doing it today here on Vince. Great to have you with us. Hey, we're days away from that Rio reset, possibly the greatest threat to the U.S. dollar's global dominance in over 80 years. And on July 6th, the BRICS nations, Russia, China, India, Iran, and so many more, they're all expected to unveil their plans to try to circumvent the U.S. dollar, thus cratering its value. Now, it has been reported they've already been laying the groundwork as their central banks have been methodically divesting from the U.S. dollar and U.S. bonds in favor of gold. Now, how can you help protect your IRA or 401k from any fallout from this landmark shift? Diversify. Diversify with gold from Birch Gold Group. Historically, gold has been a safe haven in times of high uncertainty, which is right now. So get a free info kit from Birch Gold Group on tax-sheltered gold IRAs by texting the word Vince to 989898. July 6th could mark a monumental shift happening among nations that control about a third of the world's GDP. Help arm yourself with information to diversify your retirement savings. Text Vince to the number 989898, and you can claim your free info kit from Birch Gold. Message and data rates apply. All right, here we go. The big, beautiful bill passed the United States Senate this weekend, and not without being savaged quite a bit by the Senate parliamentarian who gets to decide, can it fit into reconciliation or not? And so that Harry Reid appointee caused a whole bunch of trouble leading up to that vote being advanced through the Senate. Now, it's not completely done in the Senate. There's a couple more votes to be taken, but it's on its way. A massive, massive vote this weekend. And let me just kind of quickly go over some of the things that happened to the bill that really matter here. What has been taken out? A number of things have been taken out of that legislation. The fundamentals are still there. The big tax cut, the permanence of the Trump tax cuts, still there. The addition of other tax cuts that the president sought, still there. That's all there. That's great news. Also, the enforcement of our border and the expansion of ICE to eject the invaders from our country, all these illegal foreign nationals, that's all still there. So the fundamentals, the meat of this thing, still present. But there's a lot of stuff that was removed, some of which you may have liked, some of which you didn't. But let me just try and run down a few of those things. One, Mike Lee was attempting to sell some federal land. He wanted to sell federal real estate at one point. There was some tussling with the parliamentarian over whether or not that would stay. In the end, it got yanked out, and it was yanked out actually by Senator Mike Lee. Mike Lee said that the reason he pulled out the federal land sale provision is because he was concerned that there were no safeguards to prevent countries like China or organizations like BlackRock or any other foreign interest from buying this federal land. So he said for that reason, he's made the decision to withdraw the federal land sales provision from the bill. So that is out. Also out, there was an effort to amend something called the National Firearms Act, which would have removed a bunch of the government's interference in your ability to buy a suppressor or a short barrel rifle or a short barrel shotgun. That has all been removed from the bill. The parliamentarian said you can't change the law in this way. Here's the one piece of good news as it relates to guns, though. Those three things, the short-barreled weapons as well as the suppressors, you will no longer have to pay $200 to the federal government to purchase one of those. Yeah, there was a fee for that. That's been removed by the bill. So that is a very, very good thing. I'm seeing here somebody named Jordan133 in the chat saying, Trump betrayed gun owners, changed my mind. Get the hell out of here, Jordan. He didn't betray anybody. The parliamentarian and the squishes in the Senate are letting these gun changes just go by the wayside. They should fight back against this. We shouldn't even have this parliamentarian parliamentarian there. We should fire that lady. In fact, President Trump straight up said that she shouldn't be doing this. She shouldn't be interfering in this Republican bill. So there is that. The president, the Republicans, the good ones at least, are fighting to protect gun owners here. And they did get us some progress. They got rid of all of those arduous fees just to buy a suppressor. $200 on top of buying the suppressor in the first place. It's crazy. The federal government trying to interfere. That's a big thing. Also, what's out? A school voucher program that allowed you to take your money to private schools or religious schools. That's out of the bill now. That you don't get to have that anymore. That sucks, and that's stupid. Why does the parliamentarian gets to decide these things? Apparently, the provisions that were meant to block the use of Medicaid funding for gender-affirming care, she yanked it out. So we can mutilate people with federal tax dollars still? That's crazy. Get rid of that garbage. Why did the parliamentarian get involved here? Also, there were restrictions that were proposed on federal courts to stop nationwide injunctions. She yanked that last week. But let me tell you the good news. Let's focus on that. On Friday, the Supreme Court said, no, you can't do that to all of these crazy district judges across the country. There's over 400 of these district judges, over 40 nationwide injunctions imposed on the Trump administration. Thank God the United States Supreme Court, in a 6-3 decision led by Amy Coney Barrett, writing the majority opinion. That's the one she bitch slapped, Ketanji Brown Jackson in. It was great. It was phenomenal. And these nationwide injunctions are being slowed down big time thanks to the Supreme Court on Friday. So we don't even fundamentally need that in the law, but the parliamentarian was interfering in the first place. And then there was a version of something called the REINS Act that would have allowed Congress to have more power over the regulatory agencies because Congress is supposed to have the power over them. And Mike Lee was trying to advance that. It was yanked. The parliamentarian got rid of it. And then finally, last big item that you need to know about is that there was some effort to basically say, hey, like, look, state and local cops, you can help out with immigration enforcement. You can help. That's what Congress wanted to say. And we're not going to give grant money to sanctuary cities. We're going to stop that federal money from flowing to sanctuary cities. All of that, that's been removed. The parliamentarian got in the way. The president did respond to all of that chaos this weekend. And he said the following. He said, where am I here? I'm like all over the place. Stand by. Here it is. Great Congressman Greg Steube is 100% correct. An unelected Senate staffer, parliamentarian, should not be allowed to hurt the Republicans' bill. Once many fantastic things out, no DJT. That's the president of the United States weighing in on this. So he's upset about the parliamentarian nonsense, and I am too. I just think it's complete garbage that this person's able to interfere in this way. So those are the updates on the bill. Now, the bill does make it through this weekend. It makes it through a massive procedural step over the weekend. And it was Tom Tillis and Rand Paul that got in the way. Now, originally, Ron Johnson got in the way. That's right. Senator Ron Johnson also got in the way from Wisconsin, and they had to call in the Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance, to come in for the tiebreaker vote. But luckily, J.D. didn't need to vote at all because Ron Johnson eventually went to John Thune and said, hey, actually, let me change my vote. Let me change it. So Ron Johnson escaping the heat this weekend by making himself a yes vote on the big, beautiful bill. Good to see it. And that goes back to, you remember, I talked to him last week. We talked about all this. And I said, gosh, I have this hunch. I have this feeling. I know how this is going to go. Rand is going to vote against it. And Ron Johnson, in the end, is going to come through and he's going to vote for it. Now, again, it's not all the way through the Senate yet, but it's a huge deal that he came in and supported the procedural vote. So Ron Johnson, that's a yes. That's a yes. And then there's Tom Tillis. Tom Tillis is out of control. Out of control. And so this weekend, Tillis votes against the big, beautiful bill. He votes against it. And right after he voted against it, President Trump came out with a statement that it is time for Tom Tillis to go. No more Tom Tillis. He posted this to Truth Social this weekend. I want you to see this. Take a look. This is the President of the United States saying, numerous people have come forward wanting to run in the primary against Senator Tom Tillis. I will be meeting with them over the coming weeks, looking for someone who will properly represent the great people of North Carolina and, so importantly, the United States of America. Thank you for your attention to this matter. All right, so the president puts this out Saturday night. Sunday, Tillis announces he's retiring. That's right. Tom Tillis is done. Tom Tillis is done. And I've got a couple of feelings about this. One, I'm thrilled about it because Tom Tillis should not be in the United States Senate. Tom Tillis has been a net drag on the United States Senate. He has betrayed Republican voters over and over and over again. A bunch of ways. One way Tom Tillis has done this is he was a supporter of something called the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. In its final form, you know what that did? That expanded red flag laws across the country. This is for my gun owners here, you guys, for the gun owners out there. You know what this is about. This is about disarming American citizens without any meaningful due process and making people, including law enforcement, a lot less safe. That's what that legislation did. The Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, of course, makes communities less safe. It's ridiculous, and Tom Tillis supported it. Also, he supported repealing the Defense of Marriage Act. He got rid of that and replaced it with what the left wanted, which was the Respect for Marriage Act, ROMA, instead of DOMA. And the concept there was to virtue signal about how much Tom Tillis loves gay marriage. Now, at this point, it was completely irrelevant legislation because the Supreme Court had already rendered a judgment on the subject. So Tom Tillis was just coming in to tell people that, hey, I love gay marriage too. Okay, Tom, settle down, son. That's what he wanted everybody to know. So now we do. Additionally, he supported amnesty for illegal aliens here in the United States. During Biden's time in office, Tom Tillis was working for amnesty for illegals, for so-called dreamers. These were people who are here in the United States illegally, not legally. And Tom Tillis supported amnesty. Amnesty. And of course, he opposed President Trump's national emergency declaration, when Trump wanted to spend funding on a border wall, Tillis was getting in the way. And then this weekend, Tillis votes against the big, beautiful bill, which is very good for the rest of us, but apparently not for him. So he voted against it. And then finally, the one thing that really stands out this year, and you know so much about this because we talked about it extensively, and we had everybody associated with this story on the show, except for Tom Tillis. I had a standing and still have a standing invite out to Tom Tillis. Come on, explain yourself, Tom. He kamikazed Ed Martin's nomination to become the official U.S. attorney for Washington, D.C. Ed Martin, a great American patriot who is singularly dedicated to rooting out corruption inside of our government, investigating and placing people under arrest for violating the law, going after Biden officials for including the corrupt use of the auto pen to pretend like Joe Biden did have a brain and was in charge of the executive branch. Ed Martin was going after all of that. And guess who got in his way? Tom Tillis. Tom Tillis killed his ability to remain as U.S. attorney in Washington, D.C. This after Ed Martin had brought down the crime rate in D.C., was placing more people under arrest. It was Tom Tillis who got in his way. And so now, with one Truth Social post, President Trump has forced Tom Tillis out of the United States Senate. One. Trump posts, Tillis retires. It's that easy. And it happened that quickly. Now, Tillis is still going to be there. Tillis is going to be there for the next 18 months. And I'm worried about that. I don't like this arrangement because I wish he would just resign the seat. Oh, you're grumpy about being in the Senate? Good. Go away. Go away. Get out of the seat. But he's going to stay for 18 months. And now he's going to stay without even pretending that he has any sort of loyalty to either his party, to the president, and most importantly, to the agenda that these Republicans were elected on. And so Tillis, he remains there. There's some chatter this morning about how Laura Trump may be a good candidate for that seat. We'll see who emerges for it, but it has to be better than Tom Tillis. It has to be because, look, North Carolina voters deserve a lot better and the country deserves a lot better. So this is a big pickup opportunity, I think, for MAGA, for making America great again, and it's perfect. Now, Tillis took the Senate floor this weekend, and he was fuming about the big, beautiful bill. And I want to tell you what in particular he hates about all of this. Why he's so upset, because he's making it seem like he wants to fight corruption. All he's doing is enabling it. Look at cut 9 here. Here's Tom Tillis wearing a bolo tie, looking like a goofball, raging about the big, beautiful bill. Here he is.
It is inescapable that this bill in its current form will betray the very promise that Donald J. Trump made in the Oval Office or in the cabinet room when I was there with finance, where he said we can go after waste, fraud, and abuse on any programs. Now, those amateurs that are advising him, not Dr. Oz, I'm talking about White House healthcare experts, refuse to tell him that those instructions that were to eliminate waste, fraud, and abuse all of a sudden eliminates a government program that's called the provider tax. We have morphed a legal construct that admittedly has been abused and should be eliminated into waste, fraud, and abuse.
So he's standing up for the provider tax. Now, bear with me here, because I want you to know about this, because this is one of the single biggest drivers of why healthcare is so expensive in the United States right now. And it is, ready for the big reveal? Government corruption. Complete and utter and disgraceful government corruption. You want to get control of healthcare expenditures in the United States? You have to get control of the corruption here. And Tom Tillis, who has taken $3 million from the healthcare industry during his Senate career, is actually standing up to defend the corruption here. He's upset that the Senate bill reins in something called the provider tax. Now, this is crazy. I'm going to go back to go through the details with you, and you're going to hear it, and you're going to be like, are you serious? That's the way that our system works? Oh, yes, baby. Oh, yes. If you go back to the 1980s, there was this concept. It's really simple, really simple. This concept that the states need to share the costs for Medicaid. You want to take care of the people in your state, the state needs to be able to pay some money. And so the feds said, okay, whatever you pay, we'll give you some matching dollars. We'll match the money. That way you can take care of the people in your state. So everyone's got a little bit of skin in the game. That was the concept. But the states got clever. The states got real clever, and they said, wait a second. We can take advantage of this. And so what they did was they approached the hospitals. They approached the medical facilities inside of their state, and they said, how about this? You pay a provider tax, wink. You pay a tax. And so for every dollar that the hospitals pay in, quote, tax, what ends up happening is the federal government, the states take that money and then they spend it on Medicaid. The states take that money from the hospital, then they put it right back into the hospital again. And then they turn to the federal government and say, hey, look how much money we just spent. How about, where's our matching dollars? And so the feds start sending in matching dollars. In fact, they send in even more than that. Anywhere between $1 to $9 for every single dollar that's spent. So now this is a cash grab scheme. The states, through this so-called provider tax, have created a massive, massive tax grab. And here's how the scam works, just to be more specific here, because the Wall Street Journal has a great piece on this. Take a look at this. The Wall Street Journal lays out the details here. And they say it's hard to think of a bigger government-sanctioned racket than Medicaid provider taxes. Here's how it works. Ready? Here's how it works. States assess taxes on health providers, namely hospitals. Then they channel the revenue back into their Medicaid programs to draw more federal money. For every dollar that the states spend on Medicaid, they get $1 to $3 back from the feds and $9 for able-bodied individuals covered under Obamacare. Hospitals then receive more in Medicaid payments than they pay in provider taxes. Are you following this? In other words, what this means is they're not really paying taxes. They're subscribing to a program that dumps a ton of money into their hospital. That's all they're doing. And it is entirely both legal and entirely corrupt and insane. Do you know how much medical costs have gone up since the 1980s? They're the number one driver of inflation. The top price increases have been in the medical field since the 1980s. The second highest, higher education. Now you tell me why. Why is there so much money going into the medical industry, and then so much more money going into higher education above everything else, it's because the government is involved. It's because the government is dumping in your money, endless amounts of it, in order to sustain that system. And guys like Tom Tillis, who takes $3 million from the healthcare industry in his short-lived Senate career, he hasn't been there that long. This is his second term. $3 million. He's perfectly happy defending that system. Perfectly happy. And he's angry that this big, beautiful bill starts to rein it in. The Senate bill starts to cut down those so-called provider taxes all across the country. That is a good thing. And that is one of the areas where we're getting cost savings. You hear all this chatter in the media about, oh, they're cutting Medicaid. Oh, they're going after Medicaid. They're trying to kick people off of healthcare coverage. No, they're not. President Trump and the Republicans in the Senate are trying to end the corruption of the so-called provider tax scam. It's a scam, and it's been played on you for a very long time. It is totally insane. It's totally insane. Okay, hold on. I've got a lot more for you. And the chat's going great. People like the explanation. Thank you for that. People still standing up for the Second Amendment, just like me. I love the Second Amendment. Somebody saying Vince telling the Second Amendment crowd to get out of here is exactly why we're pissed. We showed up, voted back the party, and got tossed aside. Don't expect silence. Don't expect loyalty. No. I think you're misunderstanding. By the way, I love your name. I pee freely and patriotically. I adore that name. I think you're misunderstanding my point. You should speak up. Absolutely. Speak up on behalf of your Second Amendment rights and get these Republicans on board with doing whatever it takes to protect them. I totally agree with you. That said, anybody who's sticking Trump with the blame for hurting Second Amendment rights has no idea what they're talking about. It's not Trump who did this. It's not Trump. It's the fact that the Senate is allowing the parliamentarian to screw with all this and just letting that go by the wayside. They shouldn't, and President Trump's encouraging them not to allow that. So that's a big deal. But I do like the progress. I do like at least getting rid of some of these fees, but we got to get rid of all this other garbage too. The government has no business mediating gun transactions between American citizens. Let's get them out of there. How about that? All right, hold on. I've got a lot more coming up on the program with all you great patriots. But first, before we get there, if there's something all of us can believe in, it's hard work, self-reliance, and showing up for the people who count on us. But a while back, I hit a wall. I was getting some terrible sleep, and then what I would do is I'd wake up the next day, and I'd be on fumes, and I knew that I had to find something to help break me out of that cycle. That's when I found Beam's Dream Powder. Beam is proudly founded in America and run by people who share our values: hard work, integrity, and delivering results. It's a nighttime blend packed with science-backed ingredients shown to improve sleep so you can wake up refreshed and ready to take on the day. Dream is made up of a powerful blend of all natural ingredients: reishi, magnesium, L-theanine, apigenin, and melatonin. And here's the deal. Beam is giving my listeners, the ultimate patriot, discount of up to 40% off. Try their best-selling Dream Powder and get up to 40% off for a limited time. Go to shopbeam.com/Vince Show and use the code Vince Show at checkout. That's shopbeam.com/Vince Show and use that code Vince Show for up to 40% off. Yeah, baby. All right. Okay. We also I've got an immigration update that's really important for you here. And it's the left is freaking out about alligator Alcatraz. I'm loving it. You know, this week we're supposed to get alligator Alcatraz down in Florida. Down in the Everglades, they've got this old airstrip that nobody's using. Again, there's an airstrip already built there in the Everglades. And so the state of Florida and now the federal government getting in on the action saying, yeah, let's make it a detention space. You know, no walls necessary. You take off running, it's going to be hot, humid, and there's alligators and pythons everywhere. So probably not a good idea. So they're calling it alligator Alcatraz. And this weekend, you got a bunch of lefties standing outside the site complaining about it. Take a look here. Cut 1. People whining about alligator Alcatraz.
We have to advocate for all of us. And I don't know if any of you have prayed to a spiritual place, or maybe you go to church to find that spiritual place, or wherever your spiritual place is. Find it in your hearts to pray for these people who are lost so that they can become human beings again.
Okay, let me just tell you how crazy all of this is. First of all, I think what that whining, that qualifies as probably alligator tears. Spare me. Spare me. There's no, you're really upset about this? What a bunch of AstroTurf nonsense. This is. It has to be. Protesters, according to the Daily Caller, gathered alongside U.S. Highway 41 that cuts through the Everglades in this area. The people who were protesting apparently included Native Americans. You getting ready for this? Advocating for their homelands and environmental activists calling for the preservation of the area, home to multiple endangered animal species and native tribes. Okay. So let me see if I can make sense of what the hell this even means. One, there's already an airstrip there. There's not going to be any environmental impact from all of this. They're just putting up tents on top of the airstrip. So what are you even talking about? Literally nothing. Two, let me get this straight. So a bunch of people who are claiming to be Native Americans go out and are protesting this detention space, which is designed to get illegal alien invaders out of our country. You following me? So a bunch of, again, so-called Native Americans who say things like, you're living on stolen land, this is native land, are angry that people are being deported from living on the stolen land? Does this even make any sense whatsoever? If you are somebody who considers yourself a Native American who thinks that people are on your stolen land, wouldn't you support deporting every last person you could? The whole thing is so stupid. And so you get a group of people out there going out there and saying, oh, we want to stop this. We're advocating for these people. We have to advocate for all of these people. Are you kidding me? What insanity. Yeah, someone says Soros is behind this. Of course, this is astroturfed nonsense. Also, like, enough with the, like, I'm Native American. I was born in America. Look, let's also be clear. If you go back far enough, there's nobody indigenous to anywhere. You just keep going far back enough, nobody's indigenous, definitely to this country. Nobody's indigenous. The whole thing is so stupid. I mean, do you really run around in your daily life and then scold people based on whatever inherited ancestry you have all the time? I mean, you don't see me running from pizza place to pizza place around my house and saying, hey, your pizza's terrible. You're really dishonoring my culture. No, I just go to some other pizza place. I just look for the right place to get a good slice of pizza. It's so stupid. Really, where do you get all this time? Who's paying for this garbage? And who's still falling for the I'm an indigenous person moral blackmail? It's ridiculous. Anyway, there's a rent them up. I think it's the funniest thing in the world, though. Like, we're indigenous, the land is stolen, and you want to keep people here who are here illegally? That makes literally no sense at all. So thank you for your contributions to this conversation. You receive no points, and may God have mercy on your soul. Okay, that's what we've got. Coming up, I do have a great guest for you. Alex Marlowe is going to be with us from Breitbart. He's got a great new book out that you need to know all about. And he's a smart dude. So I'm very much looking forward to that conversation. But first, I got to tell you about our great sponsors. Blackout Coffee powers me up every day. Blackout Coffee is so wonderful. John is the owner over at Blackout. He's the real deal, and he built Blackout Coffee from the ground up. He doesn't compromise on quality or values. This is America First coffee. Roasted fresh right here in the United States. There's no woke nonsense, just bold, strong coffee for people who actually get stuff done. And as you know, Blackout Coffee has been the official coffee of everybody here at Silverlock. So you do know that this is a brand that stands for the right values. It definitely does. And it's a delicious cup of coffee. That is the most important thing to me. I just need a great cup of coffee every day. Blackout Coffee is a phenomenal cup of coffee. And here's the deal. If you'd like a phenomenal cup of coffee too, John is hooking you up. You can head over to blackoutcoffee.com/Vince. Use the code Vince. That's VINCE. And you're going to get 20% off your first order. Whether you like whole bean, ground, or even instant coffee that doesn't suck, Blackout Coffee has you covered. Support a company that shares your values. Blackoutcoffee.com/Vince. Use the code Vince, and you're going to get 20% off your first order. Blackout Coffee. Thank you to Blackout for sponsoring the program. Love these guys. Also got to tell you about Brickhouse Nutrition, which has always been such a great sponsor of this show. You can go big right now on their sale and get stocked up on some of the best supplements from Brickhouse Nutrition. Their July 4th sale is on Independence Day. And for a limited time, you can save 25% off of everything with Fireworks 25. That's cool. That includes Lean. That's their top-selling weight loss supplement. No injections, just real results, studied natural ingredients. It's a great time to help slim down for the summer. Or Field of Greens, the superfruit and vegetable drink that literally promises your doctor is going to notice your improved health or your money back. And literally everything from Brickhouse Nutrition is incredible. You know, I hear listeners rave about their collagen peptides, and some beauty experts swear that collagen could be the fountain of youth for both your skin and your hair. So let's get stocked up on their incredible supplements. Go to brickhousenutrition.com. Use the code FIREWORKS25 for 25% off. This sale's only on for a few days, and I know products do sell out. That's brickhousenutrition.com, brickhousenutrition.com. These statements and products have not been evaluated by the FDA. These products are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease or condition. There we go. All right, my next guest is Alex Marlow. He's got a new book coming out. He's already a New York Times bestselling author. He's got a new book coming out, available for pre-order now. It's called Breaking the Law, Exposing the Weaponization of America's Legal System Against Donald Trump. And he joins us here on the program. Alex Marlow, great to see you here, sir.
Vince, it's really nice to see you. Congrats on the new show. It is sounding great, and I always love talking to you on the radio in Washington, D.C., and it's nice to be on this massive podcast that Dan built.
Yes, he did build something great, didn't he? And so, yeah, we're so grateful for that. All right, Alex, tell me about the new book. I mean, obviously, we've been following this as a country, watching as President Trump and everyone around him has been utterly under attack by our legal system. What did you write about in the book here?
Yeah, thank you. And I appreciate it. And it's available for pre-order. So I can come back and tell you about more details coming up here in a few weeks when it's out. But I'll tell you what I did was I'm an investigator by nature, and I investigated the media with my first book, Breaking the News, and I investigated Joe Biden for Breaking Biden. I think we spoke about both of those on your show, and the Biden family. And I just had this hunch a little over a year ago that this lawfare apparatus, this superstructure is how I termed it, that was trying to take out Trump and try to literally put him in jail in the run up to the 2024 election, that this was more well-funded, more vast. It was one of these things that was a bigger threat than people were giving it credit for, and that there was deep coordination across branches of the U.S. government. And so I spent a year investigating it, and that's, of course, what I found. It is horrifying, the stuff that I saw. And then, lo and behold, Vince, at the beginning of the new administration, Trump wins, thank God, survives an assassination attempt, thank God. And immediately, who gets to work as the only viable resistance against him is the lawfare superstructure with these injunctions. So it was fortuitous, I think, that I chose this topic because it's so relevant today.
Yes, it is. Okay, so take me back to all of the attacks that emerged over the course of the campaign, because I think to any observer, as you're watching all of this, you're like, of course this is a political hit job. They waited to fire until right in the middle of the campaign. And you get people like Letitia James and Alvin Bragg and Fannie Willis. And then, of course, the Biden White House and Jack Smith. In your book, do you kind of go over the connecting tissue between all of those characters?
Yeah, absolutely. So I go through a case study of each of the major cases against Trump. With the Jack Smith cases, there were two of them. I took those on at the same time. And each one of the cases is worse than you could ever imagine, just in terms of the political nature of it or the absurdity of the arguments that were made. And in one case, one of the cases turned out to be entirely illegal to begin with. And that's why that one ended up in a big failure. I'll let the audience read it to figure out which one that is. But it is one of these things where every single one of them was clearly politicized, as we could see, but it is dramatic to see some of the connective tissue where you see which key players of the cases are showing up at the White House at a certain amount of time, which sort of exceptions were built into some of the cases so that the rules were broken, the law was broken, to be frank, in order to make sure that Trump was on defense. And they were really trying to also waste his time. So he had to campaign from the courtroom and try to win a national election from the courtroom, which somehow he did it, which is just adds to Trump's lore. But one of the things, Vince, that's so important here is that Trump has not been gotten justice. We've not investigated any of these things. And that's also one thing I'm hoping to start the conversation, that we need to go back and put pressure on all the people who were clearly violating the law in order to try to put Trump behind bars. Definitely.
No question whatsoever. I completely agree. I was just talking about a couple of features here. One, of course, Ed Martin, who is working as the head of weaponization in the Justice Department. He was the U.S. attorney, and I know he cares a great deal about this, trying to get to the bottom of it. And we know that the FBI is doing some probing into Letitia James for her mortgage fraud.
Yes.
But the thing that you and I definitely want to see is a more consequential investigation into what so clearly seems like a RICO violation, an organized criminal conspiracy against the president of the United States, trying to rob him from the ability to become president again.
It is awesome. I was thinking about this with the Fani Willis case. I was going through it, and she's trying to bust Trump on RICO. And it's so clearly that she's the one who should be brought up on these charges, because she's the one who's coordinating various elements of the political and government classes with the clear intention of getting Trump. I mean, that was the multiple people, Tish James, Fani Willis, they all campaigned on specifically we're going to get Trump. And then they were elected, and then they immediately got to work doing it and stretching and straining in order to get anything in front of a simpatico judge or jury in order to try to get charges brought against Trump. And that's why Joe Biden, as we learned, literally thought Trump was going to be in jail. That was partially why he hung on so long, as they thought he thought he was going to have a cakewalk in the election, because they thought one of these things was going to work. And it's kind of a miracle they all didn't. When you consider what we've seen during the first part of Trump's administration, Vince, how the cases are decided sometimes once the jury is impaneled. If you can get a jury impaneled in the right district, in the right area, it's so politicized. We've become so tribal in certain ways that you can guarantee the outcome regardless of the arguments. And that is clearly why I say the law is broken.
Well, that posed a problem for the left in their pursuit of Trump, because they impaneled a grand jury in Washington, D.C. for Jack Smith, and then they transferred the case to Florida. And this is when they run into Judge Eileen Cannon, who is, as far as I can tell, is a hero in this story. Because Eileen Cannon points out during the legal proceeding that Jack Smith is not even constitutionally in the role, that Jack Smith is an unconstitutional special counsel going after President Trump. And that struck me as, I thought, one of the most meaningful legal victories in the whole sequence of events, because it really demonstrated how fraudulent this pursuit of Trump was.
Yeah, it's really tempting to just go through it all. It's one of my favorite portions of my research, is getting all the details of that. The story of how the Trump team figured out that Jack Smith is unconstitutional. It's spy novel stuff. It is beyond belief. And Vince, it's so tempting to go through all of it with you. I know my publishers will reprimand me if I do so a few weeks out from publication, but it is unbelievable. And you meet so many heroes in the book from Trump's team who figured this out, which was, I don't even know how they did it, but it was truly genius. And once they had this approach that we're going to prove Jack Smith's unconstitutional, and they rallied all of these people, just a murderer's row of conservative movement stalwarts, to file for end of the court briefs on behalf of this argument that Smith was unconstitutional. And so it doesn't even matter what his findings are, because they determined his job didn't exist. It's unbelievable stuff. It really is. It was really fun to go through.
And I think, didn't Clarence Thomas also voice in one of his concurring opinions, he said something to this effect, that there's a question of whether or not this is even legitimate to have Jack Smith in this role?
You've done a lot of homework. No, Thomas kind of teased it. It was actually a couple of years or a couple of months prior. He did have some language that was really quick. It was sort of a sugar pop in one of his opinions in another case, where he suggested maybe something like this might not be legit. And then a few months later, that was a kernel that was very much used to take down Smith.
It's just so crazy, everything that we've been through, everything that the president's been through. You're right. I mean, the left had to have been convinced that there was no way he could return to office. I mean, if you think about just the sheer number of things they threw at him, the belief was that one of these things is going to stop him.
That's right.
I think that the betting odds on that would have probably been very high.
It's a much bigger W for Trump and a bigger L for the left than people have given it credit for.
Yeah.
It did, of course, it hampered his campaign, which is part of the intention. But there were so many of these cases with hostile juries and hostile judges, literally hostile in a literal sense. And I'll go through some of the examples of some of the meanness and nastiness of the judges in it. But then, the main point to reflect on is that the lawfare superstructure is working around the clock right now, and they're not going to be deterred. And we get a massive win on Friday with the rebuke of Ketanji Brown Jackson and the birthright citizenship case, which has has not been decided, by the way. It's just the injunctions, the universal injunctions from district courts. That's now gone away, thank God, and should have been obvious, but we had to endure it for 6 months. But trust me, this is a very well-funded, very well-organized group, highly coordinating with the upper echelons of Democrat politics. And they will continue to innovate and come up with new tactics to try to shut down Trump, his agenda, and whoever follows him. This is a massive battle for our time, and we need to get narrowly focused on it right now.
What did you think of this decision on Friday from the Supreme Court, where we get a 6-3? The big one is the 6-3 decision that says that these nationwide injunctions are completely out of control and need to be reined back. And Amy Coney Barrett writes the majority opinion here. And she absolutely bitch slapped Ketanji Brown Jackson in the process, and basically indicated that she has no idea what she's even talking about legally. I mean, in Supreme Court language, I don't know if we've ever seen such a clear act of condescension towards a fellow justice.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. It was a incredible day, incredible decision, and the opinion by Barrett was beyond belief for me, because for the last year I've been reading nonstop Barrett disappointments, and she's been disappointing in so many ways. Yeah. Overall, she's a conservative. I don't buy she's not a conservative. I just think that on the hardest issues, she tends to shy away from the controversial stance. And not only was this a brilliant opinion, but it really set up Ketanji Brown Jackson as this lunatic that she really should not be on the court. Barrett wrote in so many words that she's a dumb libtard. And I couldn't believe it to read that. And now all we can do is make fun of Ketanji Brown Jackson for the next 20 or 30 years, because there's nothing else we can do, but we're going to. And by the way, we could lose the birthright citizenship case unless Congress moves on it and acts. So that is something to consider, that it is a big win on the court front, but it could be bigger considerably if we are able to actually remove birthright citizenship, which is totally illogical. But the district court judges, where Trump had to get there were 677 vetoes possible for his executive branch to act in fundamental ways. And the thought that a district judge is supposed to be confined to a district, that's the point, that they could have control over the national executive branch was so ridiculous. It was glorious to see that come to an end, and especially in such entertaining fashion. I could not find one other example, Vince, of a justice rebuking a colleague to that degree. That was the number one, biggest, from the third rope with the folding chair, stone cold stunner on another justice I've ever seen. And that was so cool.
It was awesome. And also, Elena Kagan was with the dissent in this. Yeah. And she was on the side of district judges trying to stop the president from doing his job. Mm-hmm. It was just a few years ago during the Biden administration that she sat on a stage and she straight up said that these nationwide injunctions are out of control and you can't just have one district judge shutting down the president of the United States. At that time, she was talking about Joe Biden, but then, of course, she joins the dissent here because she's teaming up against Trump. I don't know if I've ever seen somebody so nakedly apply their politics to the court. Usually they're a little bit more clever than that.
Well, when people get a chance to read Breaking the Law, they're going to see example after example. And thank you again for reaching out and letting me talk about it, because I'm so excited about this research and this work. But it is one case after the next that the people who are put in power, it is names who would be familiar to you, names who will not be familiar to you. They took on the lawfare against Trump specifically not because of justice, because it was a political thing. And having a politicized judicial branch that is able to just write their own rules, like, for example, district courts can veto the executive branch of the United States, is insane. No one in a vacuum would ever agree with it, especially people. I can't speak for Libtard Jackson anymore, but certainly not Elena Kagan, certainly not anyone with a brain, even though they're liberals. They wouldn't agree to that in a vacuum. The problem is that they believe the biggest crime you could have in the United States of America is being Donald Trump or his family. That is it. That's the biggest criminal act you can do. And if they start from that principle that Trump his existence is basically illegal, then all they're going to do is bend and break the law in order to make sure that he's on his back foot.
And what that means is that we are all co-conspirators in that violation of the law. That the biggest crime that you can commit is voting for Donald Trump in the first place. And so this is a system that is deeply resentful of the constitutional republic, of our democratic system. They resent it when it doesn't go their way, and then they launch all sorts of attacks on it while claiming that they're upholding democracy.
Vince, what comes next? It's going to be more debanking. It's going to be more deplatforming. It's going to be more
Yes.
shadow banning. It is going to be more J6 kangaroo court trials, throwing in people in jail for years on end for nothing. I mean, that is what they want to do. They are starting with Trump. The quote I keep coming back to is Trump saying, they're not just coming after me, they're coming after you. Normally you can't take Trump literally, Vince. Take him literally in that one. That is 100% true. He is the biggest threat to them. They want to take him out, make an example out of him. But if they get him, they're going to get you next. They're going to get me next. And they already have been trying it.
Yes, they have. Well, we've seen all sorts of expressions of it. So like, I think of John Eastman being debanked by a Bank of America and USAA.
Yes.
I think of people like these Christians who've been targeted by the Biden Justice Department, people saying church hymns outside of abortion mills, parents going to school board meetings, having their license plates written down from the school parking lot. There were a lot of unfortunate test runs on this that made a lot of people miserable or destroyed lives or drove people to suicide. I just can't imagine how much worse it can get. But what you're emphasizing, Alex, is it can get worse.
Oh, it's going to get worse. It will. Absolutely. These people are not going to be deterred. I went to UC Berkeley. When I was there, there was a group called BAM, By Any Means Necessary. And it was mostly a affirmative action thing. But that always struck me as any means, like shooting a guy in the ear in Butler, Pennsylvania means. Like, yeah, that's where they're at, is they believe politics is above everything. We conservatives, we have other stuff. We have our church communities, we have our families, we have our jobs. For the left, politics is the biggest thing. That's the biggest, most important thing in their life. That's their North Star, and they'll do whatever it takes to win. And they think if that means jailing the innocent, debanking, they do not care. They do not care on a collective level because they think the ends justifies the means, and the ends are defeating conservatism and really taking over this country and destroying this country.
So what do you think the path out is? Is there a path towards a more durable unity? I mean, I imagine there's never going to be a time at which we all agree on the same topics. That's never going to happen. But is there a path towards some normalcy and making America great again, as the president might say? Yeah, the number one thing to do is to win every election. But in between that, stay in a war footing, be aggressive, keep tuning into shows that are bringing messages like yours and what Dan does and what I'm doing on podcasting now. And I'm on Rumble. I know you guys are huge on Rumble. So Alex Marlowe Show, you guys can check that out. I would love it if you did. But staying on that war footing so that we're not on our back foot and making sure that we're thoroughly vetting people who are movement conservatives when we're making judicial picks. It cannot just be people who are just, oh, we're smart, we kind of like them. No, we need people with bona fides who have fought for these values. And when we're nominating them to big stuff, that's a crucial thing. But just understanding that we've got to win every election and we have to take that dead seriously. But we also have tools at our disposal. And when you have a Ketanji Brown Jackson out there, we have to use mockery and ridicule. We have to make fun of them. We have to be the coolest kids we can possibly be because the left use that as an advantage for them. And we've got a huge opportunity. They're lame. They're dorky. They're stupid. They make fools of themselves all the time. And we have a historic opportunity to really take back the culture in that way. I think it's already happening, but let's just keep going in that direction. I love it. Yeah, no, I'm with you 100%. And when you're looking for the types of people who should be in positions of power, look to the people who are speaking up early, not the ones who join late, who just kind of watch where the winds are shifting. It's the people who are thinking clearly in the moments of chaos. They're not panicking, but they are telling you exactly what's going to come next. No panicking. No, you're right about that. I want the longevity. I want to see people who have taken slings and arrows, sustained it and got up and kept going. And I think that's very important when you're talking about the biggest post, the cabinet type post, the Supreme Court type post. That's a really big deal, is that we have to emphasize that we need warriors right now. We need to be in a warrior footing because the left is trying to destroy this country. I'm not saying every liberal Democrat voter, a lot of them are just checked out, but the institutional left is so strong. They are so well funded. They are so aggressive. And they're all over the place. It's not just in politics. What I learned is it's in the law as well. And that is it should scare you. And hopefully we can all chart a path forward and start some new conversations around it. Okay. So finally, just because I started the show talking about Tom Tillis heading out, and I want to get your thoughts on the Senate. I mean, we obviously have a couple of people that either are leaving or need to straight up be replaced. And so, for instance, Tom Tillis is leaving. This is a great opportunity for somebody who's much more in line with a sensible, decent, pro-America agenda to be in that seat. Mitch McConnell is on the way out. There's a great candidate in Kentucky by the name of Nate Morris, who seems like a very viable option. He's close to J.D. Vance. He's really talented. I think he could be very good. I'm going to talk to him soon. You look at guys like John Cornyn. He's got Ken Paxton is outpolling him right now. There's some real opportunities here. What are you watching in all of these?
Yeah, you're raising some really important races. I think about the Paxton race because some people have quibbled with some of Paxton's personal stuff. Maybe he's done something that one of you didn't like at some point. But Ken Paxton is a bona fide movement conservative warrior. And those are the type of people we need in positions of leadership right now. So that's a perfect example of let's not lose the forest for the trees here. We need conservative warriors in this spot at this moment. Tillis has just gotten so much worse over time, and he's continued to just buck trends. He just does not need to buck. And I'm really happy to see him go. And I'm really optimistic we're going to get a great candidate there. The type of people we're talking about, I mean, anyone who listens to me and knows my stuff knows that I'm a huge Laura Trump fan. I think she's one of the best Trumps. She's amazing. I think she'd cakewalk in that seat if she wanted it. But Michael Whatley's out there. There's a couple other people. It's a deep bench in North Carolina of people who are conservative warriors who are going to be great votes, much better than Tillis when they get to the Senate. The Kentucky race is interesting because it seems like there's sort of two McConnell-backed candidates, and Don Jr. World and JD World seems to be thoroughly behind Nate Morris, which is a formidable political force. I haven't talked to him personally. I know Matt Boyle at Breitbart is our Washington bureau chief, is a huge fan of his. But I just like that we're recruiting a warrior class of people to be our leaders. I think that's a big deal. And it's so exciting because it feels like, Vince, there's a consensus that that's what needs to be done. I'm just verbalizing it, but I do feel like everyone feels that and they need that to be the case.
I love it. Also, it's like a total change over the course of my life because I've watched so many conservatives just wake up and be like, I didn't want to be involved in this. I didn't want to have to deal with any of this crap. I just wanted to go about my life, tend into my family. Now you force me to wake up and get involved? Fine. I'm involved now. I'm going to make it better.
Yeah, but you and I have a very similar approach because we're not trying to yell at people, but it's like we're also not going to shy away from a single fight. Like we're not coming in like I just want to rip everyone a new one every single second. That's not what gets us out of bed. Like we got families, we got lives. We have to, like, it's necessary. You got to point it out. The stuff is outrageous. What's going on? And it is, we just need people who will fearlessly do that and to not get cowed by the media and by pressure and by any sort of online hate campaigns. And we're so over that. So we have no tolerance for it. Someone wrote something negative about you in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal. Who cares? No one cares.
Right. Yeah. Amen. Alex Marlow, keep up the great work, man. You've been doing it forever. Keep doing it. You got your book coming out very soon. Can't wait to see that. You can pre-order it now. Thank you, Alex. Good to talk to you today, sir.
Yeah, Vince, it's a pleasure. And congrats again. And thanks to the whole Silverlock family.
Yeah, baby. Thank you very much. There he is, Alex Marlow with Breitbart. Got a great new book coming out. Very smart guy. Okay. Yeah, and Alex, you know what's cool? Alex has been editor-in-chief over at Breitbart now for a long time. I was the editor-in-chief of the Daily Caller, so we were operating these two conservative news organizations, these great conservative news organizations through the years. And I got to the Caller in 2010. So I was there when the great Andrew Breitbart was still alive, and got a chance to meet him. Wonderful human being. Actually hosted it. At the Daily Caller, we hosted Andrew's book party, which was a wild event. Andrew was a good man, but he left a great legacy, and Alex has been a great steward of the Breitbart name there. Really, really cool. Okay. Man, oh man, we do have a lot going on. Hey, real quick, I do have to take you to the madness in Idaho last night. There was what authorities are now saying they believe to have been a man who set a fire in order to get firefighters to respond to the blaze and then started gunning them down. This is Kootenai County, Idaho, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, where you had a number of firefighters killed yesterday. Listen to this chaotic scanner audio, cut 6, as the call starts coming in that they're under fire.
Central BC 5, Central BC 5. BC 506. Someone law enforcement right now, there's an active shooter zone. They're shot. BC 3's down, BC 1's down. Everybody's shot up here. Law enforcement, code 3 now up here. 551, 10 or 14 up here. Stop. Get out of the way, okay. 10 or 14.
Yeah, so the call starts coming in that these guys are now being shot as they're trying to fight a fire. I just can't even imagine the nightmare that they were undergoing. As authorities started mobilizing resources, speaking of Dan Bongino, he was one of the guys who was speaking up early about this. The FBI joined a multi-agency effort yesterday to get some support out there. FBI assets headed to the scene in Coeur d'Alene to provide tactical and operational support. It is an active scene. That's what Dan mentioned last night as all of this was going down. We did get an update from the local sheriff. He said he was the first to report that these deaths had occurred. 2 firefighters killed, 1 in critical condition and in surgery. Take a look, cut 7, the local sheriff.
We now have 2 deaths. We have an unknown amount of casualties. We still have civilians that are coming off of that mountain. We might have civilians that are stuck or in shock on that mountain. So this is a very, very fresh situation. We are actively taking sniper fire as we speak. This is
Sniper fire.
This is an active situation.
Okay, so let's move on from here.
agencies
So the sheriff then comes back a little bit later to report that they have found the shooter. The shooter is dead. They found the gun near him, and they used cell phone tracking technology to detect his ping, and that's how they were able to approach what they found, his body. Take a look, cut 8 here, as the sheriff talks about what went down last night.
We had a cell phone activation that was in the same spot since about 3:16, and that it was in the same area, and we honed in on that cell phone, and we saw that there was a male, appeared to be deceased, with a weapon nearby. So we have currently 1 dead shooter. Based on the preliminary investigation that was being conducted, keep in mind we had a fire that was rapidly it was approaching the body, so we had to scoop up that body, and we had to transport that body to a different location. But based on the preliminary information, we believe that is the only shooter that was on that mountain at that time.
What a nightmare. What a complete nightmare. And if the sequence is what the cops describe, which is they believe that the fire was intentionally set to lure the firefighters into an ambush, that is one of the most demonic things I could possibly imagine, that a human being would do that to first responders who are just trying to protect their community. Imagine the circumstances of having to, one, fight a fire and then be under fire at the same time. So we await more details on all of this. Again, that tragedy out of Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, firefighters attacked by some kind of terrorist here, and we'll get more information. The FBI, as you saw, Dan Bongino and Kash Patel, very involved, reaching out, speaking to the guys who are out there as they dealt with this multi-agency effort to both stop the shooter and to now get answers. So we'll keep our eyes open for that. Hey, thank you very much for joining me today, as always, on Vince. Appreciate you for that. As I mentioned a few minutes ago with Alex Marlowe, we're going to be talking to candidates and all sorts of people as we kind of look forward to the future of this country, bringing in some backup, some reinforcements to help pass the agenda that you and I have all been voting for. We're going to bring these guys in and make sure we can keep pushing forward towards that. That's a really important mission here. So you'll get a lot more of that. And of course, I've got the national radio show. You'll be able to hear more today. I've got a lot more news to get to. That's from 12 to 3 Eastern time. If you're looking for the show, just go to thevinceshow.com and click on where to listen, or just come to Rumble, rumble.com/Vince. You can listen and watch live. I do the whole thing on camera. What a weird thing. It's radio, but it's on camera. I love the audience that joins me, both for this and the radio show. You guys are the best damn audience in media. Please subscribe, follow, like, share, do whatever you can to help us out. I appreciate you for that. Thanks for being here today. Coming up next on Rumble, Steven Crowder takes things away.